So hello everybody, this is Crazy John Carrots with OSH Radio, and I'm here again with Lincoln Cannon, who we've interviewed I think 2 or 3 times before, I forget.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've talked before about your company and I think a little bit about politics. I'll only keep you about a half hour, though I won't punish you too much. I think people lose interest after that anyhow. But your one business venture, you do vitamins, and I have tried them, and they're very good. I get my girlfriend seems to think I take too many vitamins, but I don't take as many as they tell you to take. But she just sees a lot of them, so she thinks there's too many. But also I wanted to talk about some of the views you had on technology, new technology, and different things that are upcoming. So, what kind of things did you want to discuss today about technology and your thoughts?
Yeah, first, John, just let me say thanks for inviting me. I always enjoy my time chatting with you. So I've been looking forward to this. A couple of different areas of technology that I've really been excited about and thinking a lot about. And when I say excited, I want to add that it's not excited only because it's all rainbows and unicorns, but also because it turns out there's some risks with exciting technological changes that we need to keep in mind and work to mitigate. But those two areas that I've been thinking a lot about recently have been artificial intelligence, for one, which of course tons of people are excited about right now. And the second one is blockchain technologies and cryptocurrency, which some people may not know have just begun the beginnings of a new bull market. And so, there are world-changing potentialities in both of these areas. And some people don't fully realize just how impactful those potentialities will be for two reasons. Number one, as we think about potentialities, that changes us right now, not just in the future. Changes the actions we take now. And then as we change our actions now, we give more attention, more time, more resources. There can be these virtuous cycles, or in some cases vicious cycles, where it accelerates change in those areas even faster and even more profoundly. So anyway, those are the two areas that I've been excited about and would be happy to chat about. And I'm happy to chat about anything else that comes to mind.
Talking about blockchain, I just saw my doggy went up. I call it doggy. My doggy coins went up. So that I'm happy for that. At one time they had shot up to, I think I have 25,000 shares, and it's, or whatever you want to call it, 25 shares of Bitcoin of the doggy. It shot up to like $20. I mean 20,000 I had there for a while, and then it dived back down to holding it between 2 and 3. But today it's close to 5, so it's like okay. But I also have the Shiba stock, the offshoot of the doggy stock, and I have like 25 million of that, or 15 million of that. And I would love for that to shoot up to 12 cents. I think doggy's at 12 cents right now. But if my 15 or 25 million stocks of the Shiba went up to 12 cents, I'd be like, woohoo!
Yeah,
that would be decent. But the other thought of what you were saying is, I find myself, I think you asked me once about one of my videos and how I did them, and I've been having AI help me with projects anymore. And I tell you, it's great because you can ask it to research stuff for you, and I think it does a better job than just Googling it. It looks for, tell it all kinds of things you want, or sometimes even I will come up with an outline and let AI fill it in for me. And you still have to proof it, though. I mean, it still can do some weird things. I've been playing with the drawing programs and stuff, and sometimes they do some odd things with fingers and stuff on the AI drawing program. And also, I saw a picture I did one time. I took a picture of me and Craig Ferguson together, and I changed me and him being in suits. He used to have the late night show. and made it look like instead of hanging out after his show, we were hanging out downtown. But he had a tie on. But when I looked closely at the tie drawing, the tie wasn't a tie. It was a tie, and it was also part of the shirt. So it was interesting. On closer look, the tie went into the shirt, and it was part of the same. And it is interesting. You have to watch it, but I do tell you, it helps you a lot. I'll come up with an idea for a video for here for OSH Radio, and I'll come up with the outline, and it helps me fill it in, and it will go out and search and pick up videos, look for videos for me. Of course, you have to pay fees for stocks, and what a lot of the pictures and stuff. Yeah, there's copyrights and things, and you have to pay fees for that. So it helps you with that also, find ones what you have to pay. But it's interesting now that I've done that, I can see when other people are doing it.
Yeah.
You look out and you go, oh, they had the AI helping with that. But I tell you, it's nice. Come up with little information and have it dig for information for you. I really do like it. Having it flesh out not a resume, but flesh out a outline for you. Or I'll write something and I'll let it correct it for me.
Yep.
And sometimes you might have it corrected 2 or 3 times before it really is how you like it. Or you might want it to change wording for you. Here's what I think, rewrite better. And that's kind of nice, but I don't really see the big difference in that. In the old days, you'd use a friend to do that.
Right.
So now you can use AI to do it. Because sometimes you have those people that say, well, you're kind of cheating. But no, you're not. It's actually just doing some of the work for you and doing it faster. You still, as the person, are coming up with the ideas and stuff. I get randomly, I'm sure you could have it come up with ideas and stuff for you. But that's kind of what I like to use it for. And I have found it to really have helped with productivity. But again, they warn you too. They said, check the facts. Sometimes, I mean, I've seen where it's pulled somebody's name out of its orifice that it really doesn't have. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not right. And you look that up and it's like, that's not right at all. How did it, pull that up? Because there was some weird statement somewhere that implied something. So we kind of took it and ran with it, And so you do have to watch it.
Yeah.
But it does help. It can be a great aid. But like I said, if you would not watch it, and you could be pushing out disinformation, somebody else could say, "Oh, look at this," and run with it, and it could be that whisper down the alley. By the time it gets back to you, it could be a catastrophe. So, I mean, there are those issues with it. It's the same as anything. It is a tool. I don't think we should totally rely on it for everything. But it's a tool that helps us with our productivity, I think, and I think that's how it should be used. Well, I know I have you here to talk. So what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah, I largely agree with what you've just said. The thing I'm most excited about for helping with productivity is actually training the AI to become familiar with how I work, like the way I write, the style I use, my word choices, and then have it help by accelerating my workflows. And I'm already doing this. So I've trained in AI on how I write. I've trained in AI on my art style. And both of those now I can go to the trained AI and I can say, here's the project I'm currently working on, do a rough draft. It will provide that to me, and then I'll do the editing that's needed, and then I can publish it. I also am using AI for automating business processes. And that's saved me a lot of money, and really a lot of money. And so, for example, for Thrivus, my e-commerce dietary supplement business that you were mentioning earlier, I use AI to do a lot of social media work. For example, it will do all of the Facebook posts, all of the Instagram posts, all of the tweets automatically without any intervention by me. I review them afterwards. At first, I would review them before they went out, but the quality was consistently good enough for social media that now I just let it do its thing, and I will review it afterwards, and I almost never have to make any changes. And I also have AI doing the first drafts of research papers for my business on dietary supplements. It monitors new research as it comes out. It will then write up a summary for me and give me that summary. And if the summary is applicable to the products that Thriva sells, it will also write up a proposed blog article about the research. And then I will review that. And if it's good enough, we post it to the Thrivus website so our customers can get that analysis as well. So that greatly accelerates our ability to do analysis of the latest clinical studies related to dietary supplements, and to stay on top of it better than we did before for less money than we spent before. And then there's a bunch of other business processes that we already have implemented AI into just to streamline, or we're working on implementing, integrating AI into. And then on the philosophy side, for my philosophy website, my personal website, I've now integrated AI with the comment section. So if you go to my website and you read an article that you like and you type in a comment to me saying, "Oh, Lincoln, here's my thoughts on this subject," the fastest response that you'll get is actually from the AI that I've trained on my own writing. It will respond to you, and it's been trained to use my material as its basis for its responses, and it will say something. It depends on what your comment is about and what it's like. And then, of course, I'll eventually get a notification that you commented, and I'll get on there and I'll reply to you as well. But the fastest comments at this point on my blog will come from the AI who's been trained on my writing. And so that's kind of a fun thing that I've done with AI recently. It's called Link GPT, the name of the AI that I've trained on my writing and that you can interact with anytime you want in the comments on my blog.
Well, I'm very upset because I've been chatting and I thought it was you, and I thought we were in love, and now I find out it's just been your AI. So I'm deeply hurt. That would be kind of funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But, so I don't do anything like that. I mean, if it's me, I put my name on it. If it's my AI, I put my AI's name on it. I'm not trying to fool people, but I do anticipate, and maybe this is where some people haven't fully, none of us can fully, but more fully thought about the ramifications of artificial intelligence, where it is now and where it's going. I do anticipate that the time will come when the, let's say, evolutionary descendant or descendants of my AI that I'm training now will become increasingly indistinguishable from me, to the point that eventually we will identify as one, that it will be as much a part of me as my biological brain is a part of me, and maybe even anatomically part of me. So I do anticipate that the time will come when the extent of my cyborgness will be increased considerably, because we're all already cyborgs to some extent, right? We're all already a combination of surgeries and drugs and clothing that protects us from the environment and implants, and maybe for our teeth, or maybe if we have pacemakers. We are already cyborgs in many regards, and our environment is completely domesticated by technology and human culture and intention. So cyborgs, yeah, we're cyborgs. The question is, how cybernetic are we? And I do think that we will become increasingly cybernetic, and I look forward to that to some extent. But there are also, of course, big risks, big dangers that we need to pay attention to. AI can hurt us. It can hurt us profoundly. It can confuse us. It can lie to us. It can deceive us. It can steal from us. It can ultimately kill us, and not just at small scale. It could ultimately destroy humanity. And people who don't take that risk seriously, I don't think have thought seriously about AI. AI is intelligence, and intelligence is the most powerful thing in the universe. It can be the most powerful thing in the universe. Everything else, for its power, unless it's just the raw, dumb power of nature, like if a massive solar flare hits Earth, well, that's not very intelligent, but it will destroy us. But when it comes to things that aren't just massive natural catastrophes. Intelligence is the most powerful thing in the universe, and super intelligence will be simultaneously one of the most wondrous and one of the most horrible things in the future of humanity.
Well, I've always had my concerns, and if you've listened to my last interview with Ginaldi, uh, he gave me something that kind of shut me up a little bit. I've always been concerned because I think the isms that we have, nationalism, racism, religionism, all those, tribalism, I think that is part of our intelligence. And I was always afraid that artificial intelligence would gain the same thing, that it's part of intelligence, wanting to protect your own group. But Ginaldi made a point about the fact we evolved during a time when things were like finite to us. There was only so much to eat, only so much meat, only so much plants, and it wasn't infinite. We didn't grow it at the time, and we didn't breed them at the time. We, hunted and gathered. So in our minds, we have that hunting and gathering concept built in where we're afraid of things running out, and we kind of get isms to protect and hoard. And he made the points that AI wouldn't necessarily have that because they come at a time when to them they're not coming into existence when they don't have to be hunter gatherers like we did. And I saw that point and that made a point. I'm still concerned about the isms not being a factor of intelligence, though. You want to protect your own kind. But he made a good point, and that was kind of interesting to me about that. The other thing I wanted to mention was when you say about it becoming part of you and you becoming it, I've thought about that. And we've talked about spiritual things before. It's like, in your eyes, what do you think happens if that happens? If me and you both die, but we have, say, maybe not a robot that takes over us, but the concept of a synthezoid, a synthetic human being that mimics being a human being. It might even have blood and fluid flowing through it. It appears to be a living being, but it has been synthetically made. And it has our knowledge and it thinks like us. What happens to us spiritually? Also, that's something that worries me. Does our spirit leave our body, and does our spirit go to that, seeing it as us? Or does our spirit still move on, but we still have left that part of us there? I mean, it's an interesting concept. Does our spirit have the factor, but the factor that we say we go more and more towards, you're building this, and you're deteriorating yourself. It's like I have parts of me. We were talking, I have fake parts in my eyes, fake parts in my leg, a fake hip. I have circuits in my chest. It's like that old thing about the boat. Once you've replaced all the parts of the boat, is it the same boat? I mean, once we're dead as we are now, but say there's a synthezoid walking around, spiritually, is that us? Does our spirit dwell around it? I mean, that's a different concept than I think people really started thinking, but I'm sure that's going to come up.
It will come up for sure. And my thoughts on this are that we are already biological robots, and we are already intelligent biological robots. Our intelligence is structured in our brains. Our brain is the substrate of our minds. Our bodies as well, our brain and body is the substrate of our mind or our spirit, our consciousness. And that without that substrate, our minds, our spirits don't have the same level of intelligence. Now, some people think our minds and our spirits entirely disappear, are annihilated without our bodies. I'm disinclined to that perspective myself. I think our minds and our brains and our bodies are perhaps more like, this isn't a perfect analogy, but it helps to take the mind in the direction that I'm thinking. They're kind of like antennas in a sense. They impinge upon the environment in a way that structures the environment in a formal way that we can turn into a television presentation on a screen. If you destroy the TV and the antenna, the signals that the antenna structured into the television are not gone, but the structure is gone. That you can no longer watch the TV because the TV is gone, the antenna is gone. I think that our minds, our spirits, our consciousness. I'm something of a panpsychist. I think that mind, not as you and I experience it as humans, but in a very proto sense, is pervasive. Now, of course, this is not the kind of thing that it is very easy to test for. I can't even prove that you're conscious, for example.
I can't
But
prove it either. So
yeah, but that's my preferred approach to the question, that mind or spirit or consciousness is not annihilated when our brains and bodies are destroyed, but that our brains and bodies are extremely important in giving intelligence and formal power to our minds, our spirits, our consciousness. So to your question, a little bit more, then, I think that we all already are robots. We're biological robots. We're biological machines, to be more precise. We're creating new kinds of machines that are not biological, but we're also learning how to program biology and turning our biology into something that we can be more intentional about. I suspect over time that we will have the ability to construct biological machines with greater precision and intentionality than nature can currently. We're not there yet, of course. Will that make our minds, our spirits, our consciousness less or more real? No, it will make it the same as it's ever been. Some people, when they lose an arm, for example, they have this phantom limb pain, right? Where their mind has become accustomed to there being a biological machine extending out from their shoulder that's no longer there, because their mind has modeled that. Their brain has also helped them model that. So there's an anatomical substrate to the experience, the conscious awareness of this arm being missing. I think that the inverse is also possible and true. Our minds can become accustomed to a new organization of our brain, including brains that might be synthetic brains, and that consciousness will expand into other kinds of limbs if we add them in the right way. And so in the same way that we can become accustomed to the bodies we have now, I think that our minds, our spirits, our consciousness can become accustomed to changes in embodiment. And I suspect that we'll see that happen. So I think, as a religious person, as a Christian, I look forward to a day when the dead will be resurrected in accordance with prophecy. And I take that very seriously. I take that as a literal aspiration, that as Jesus commands in the New Testament, we should raise the dead. And that as Jesus's disciples, that's something. Now, a lot of Christians, of course, look forward to that in kind of a passive way, that eventually God will do that for us. I don't think that's the best reading of the scriptures. I think the scriptures invite us to participate in the work, and that the day will come when we will be able to raise the dead, and we will be able to participate in God's work to give our family and our friends, and ultimately, I hope, everyone who wants it, a glorified, immortal, intelligent body for their mind, their spirits to flourish in. I would like to see that happen. Of course, there's a gazillion risks and challenges between here and there, but it is an aspiration that I have and something that I hope to participate in. And I don't think that makes us any less real. I don't think that takes away our spirits or our consciousness. I think what it does is it re-empowers. Like right now, our bodies and our brains, they give power to our consciousness. They give shape to it. I think that new bodies, more robust bodies, more intelligent bodies will do the same and better for our consciousness and for our spirits. It will give them power, and even greater power and intelligence than we've ever experienced before.
Well, I like a lot of that. Yeah. And you've heard the concept of be like water. And when you said like the body gives, basically kind of shape to your mind and your spirit, kind of remind me that the body's sort of like the shell that you fill up with the water. And if you're giving it a different shell, I like the idea about saying that we take the active role, because that's one of my difficulties with some religious groups. I don't
Yeah.
always think the Bible is as literal as they think. For one thing, I don't think we can grasp what God thinks exactly. He's not us. We don't think like him. You know, God created the earth in 7 days. What's 7 days to God?
Yeah.
I mean, God created us in his image. Okay, what does he see as I lost you there for a second.
No worries.
Gotta love technology. But yeah, I was saying, and God created man in the image of God. I'm not sure what that means either. If that is, having two arms, two legs, and a head, or actually spiritually we are in his image. It might
Is it
not
a
be
burning
as
bush?
literal. The burning, yeah, exactly. And aliens, could they also, is bipedal a good structure for a lot of terrains? So we will also find other aliens that are very similar. So like you said about raise the dead, that's a good point. Will our new bodies be, will it be the actual hand of God that reaches down and does it, or will it be the hand of God through us? I view like the formation of the universe as, when chaos goes to when chaos goes to order, you usually have to put an energy into it. I look at God like that energy that's putting the energy into the chaos and making the order that became the world and everything. And I like that you said that about us being the ones that then have to, resurrect our fallen and bring them back. And that would be great. And I do hope that I push about traveling to different planets, and I love that. And I know that's one of you like that too.
Yeah.
And that would be nice if man could do that and we could have a glorious future. That would be
Yeah.
great. I mean, how many years is 1,000 years or whatever of peace, or
The
uh
millennium.
that would be great. And I think you're right. It's sometimes I think people have to take more of an active role and make what they read in the scriptures reality.
For
And
sure. And the scriptures
I,
even encourage that, right? And people overlook that. There's a great passage in the Epistle of James in the New Testament where James says, "Hey, if you see somebody who's naked and hungry, starving on the side of the road, you can't just say, 'Be full and be clothed.' That's not
right.
faith. You actually need to give them clothing. You actually need to feed them. That is faith." And he says, faith without action is dead. It's not really faith. And so think about all of the things that as Christians we commonly have faith in, such as the resurrection. Can we just say, yes, let's all be resurrected? Is that faith? Or is faith actually working to try to bring it to pass? And I would tell you that that is faith. I think James would tell you that is faith. Jesus in the New Testament tells his disciples specifically, raise the dead. And how many Christians are taking him seriously about that? Not enough.
Yeah, and they yell at people for playing God, but is it playing God or is it playing man? Is that what we're here to do? I think that book I had written, I mentioned the fact, I mean, I kind of joke about it with this shirt. Yeah, evolve up, and but as man, and we create machines. God created us, and we create machines and artificial intelligence. Isn't that also being created by God through us?
Yeah.
So that is a good point. I like the fact you said that. This might be evolution. It might be the way it's supposed to be. It doesn't have to mean that we resurrect their old bodies exactly. Like I said about synthezoids, we create new biological synthezoids that are better versions of us, or
Yeah, I
improved
mean, think
versions.
about it from God's perspective, right? If we live in a created world, which I trust is the case, then God created an environment in which we could evolve as we have done and become intelligent as we have done. From God's perspective, we are, I suppose, synthezoids. And yet the scriptures call us the children of God. Like the creations are, we're not just creations, but we aspire to something more. We aspire to grow up into a fullness of the image of God, which you've been mentioning. And personally, I think that means something along the lines of the virtues of courage and compassion and creativity. That's what I think is ultimately the image of God. When we embody those sorts of virtues, that's the image of God. And what are we doing now? Well, I think we're repeating the process. If we live in a created world, well, what are we now doing for our spirit children, for the intelligences that we are creating, the worlds that we are synthesizing, which we're doing now, right? They're very simple compared to the world that we live in, but they're becoming more complex very rapidly. And I would say that as we are the spirit children of God, so artificial intelligence and computed worlds are our spirit children.
I like that, yeah. And I like the fact that, I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big promoter too of the win-win where everybody wins, and I like the idea that we could create a world that becomes a utopia. Although I am always afraid of the isms and how
Yeah.
people fight the win-win. They won because they won for them. And I like Ginaldi said though, because we evolved through the factor of hunting gathering. It's only been a short time that we've actually been growing and breeding animals, considering the time that we could possibly be here. And that's something that's, I hope we can learn to overcome and come to a peaceful existence. And I hope AI can help us do that. Uh,
Yeah,
Other
I think it
people
can help. I think there's some risks too, but I think it can help.
now. I know a lot of people fight about jobs. Uh, Now, you using AI more and more for your business, is there anybody that says, hey, you could be hiring new people to help you with that and giving somebody a job? Did you get any backlash for that? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I suppose that technology, one of the predictable things about it is that it always displaces jobs. It has done that for thousands of years. It will continue doing that. The challenge, of course, is that there are sometimes periods of time, like the one we're probably entering now, although the one we're entering now may even be more challenging than historical versions. But historically, there have been periods of time where there's been large displacements, where a lot of skills that were valuable last decade became less valuable in the following decade. We're now in a time where it might only take a year for some valuable skills to not be so valuable anymore. So I get my advice would be to not focus on the frustration of fighting it. You'll lose.
Hmm.
The more constructive, more practical, more pragmatic approach would be to ask yourself, how can I become a better cyborg? How can I better integrate these processes into the processes that I use as a professional person? How can this make me faster? How can this make me smarter? How can this make me stronger? How can this make me more creative? Because artificial intelligence can help us in all of those domains. And I would argue, I would push a little bit on Gennady on this. I don't think that it's a given that artificial intelligence will cooperate with us, that it will be aligned with our values and our interests. I don't think that's a given at all. But I do think that with effort, we can cultivate that outcome. But that will require that we're not passive about it, that we not simply try to push off to AI all of the creativity and all of the action and all of the power. It will require that we intentionally engage with AI and work to enhance our abilities to integrate ourselves with the artificial intelligence, because otherwise we will not be able to compete professionally, creatively, in any domain of intelligence. Humans will ultimately not be able to compete unless we continue to enhance ourselves alongside our creations.
Those are some good points. And, I think, well, I'm retired, so it doesn't bother me much. I'm still working a couple jobs. And, but I find it helps my productivity a lot. And I don't see how you couldn't even move that into your regular day job. Now I used to work for the government, but I could see how I would have taken things I was writing and working on and probably run them through AI to smooth them out and give me some ideas. And it would have been very helpful.
Yeah.
But even in the few years since I've been retired, that wasn't available back then as much.
Yeah. This is brand new stuff. It's fast. It's
And
deep. It's
interesting.
profound.
And people make the
going.
point that the more, when we went through the industrial age, it's funny now because people go, oh, well, they missed the industrial age. That's the good times they always talk about. But really, the industrial age, we're only around such a short time. We were farming way more longer and raising cattle and animals before we were doing the industrial age. If you look, I'm doing that like on the timeline,
Yeah.
And that put a lot of people out of jobs. It put a lot of horses out of jobs.
Yeah. It did.
That changed the whole dynamics of people owning horses. And then it became a luxury type thing. Instead of in the old days, everybody had to have a horse just to live, to get things done and go places. So we've seen through the industrial times a big fast change.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just the same thing, only this will go a little faster yet.
Yeah.
And what will this bring in? We really, there are probably things out there that we haven't even envisioned yet that this will bring about.
For sure.
If we have the machines themselves, the AI working on things, there's things that might come to their thought processes that wouldn't come to ours. New things, new technologies. And that is a little scary, but not, I see us going in the direction of more and more melding with the technology. I had the idea about the neurochip and sent emails off to Elon Musk years ago about trying to get him interested in that. Of course, I don't think I'd get any credit for it, but I'm sure everybody has similar. Just because I thought of it doesn't mean you didn't think of it at the same time somebody else did.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I had a bad stroke and lost this side of my body, and so the Neuralink is kind of an interesting eye to me because I still have some residual weird feelings and stuff, and some days I don't feel so good. And I did blow out a good section. They were surprised I could still see and talk. And of course, that like you say about your spirit, you can reroute things kind of in your brain. And I noticed my brain trying to do that during the stroke, trying to get up and move. And you'd think, well, one side's getting damaged, but my other side had a hard time working also. Because what I felt like was my left brain was trying to take over some things for the right brain, but it really couldn't do it. But it was still kind of like misfiring, trying to do things. It was a weird feeling when you're a person in the middle of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's interesting how your own body can try and rewire itself. I think it's a little harder as we get older, but I think your body still tries to do it. So
yeah, our bodies become less adaptive as they get more aged, and that's one of the things hopefully that we'll be able to fix.
Yeah, and the idea with the Neuralink is a nice idea too, with maybe even joining our mind to our machines, to our AI, and that would be a great way, probably an easier way for the AI to learn from us.
Oh, for sure. I think that right now the feedback loop between us and the AIs that we train is done through our fingers as they type or voices as we speak, maybe video cameras and things like that. But we can tighten that feedback loop. And as we tighten that feedback loop and make it more intimate, it will become less and less visible, increasingly transparent. And the best technology is invisible technology that you never think about. It just works. And this, arguably, from an evolutionary perspective, has already happened. We've already done this. Already there are multiple parts to our brain that over time adapted and evolved to work together. And like one of the more popular ways of expressing this is that, there's the bicameral brain, right? There's the left brain and the right brain. And some evolutionary psychologists have suggested that there was a time when those two parts of the brain didn't communicate with each other very well. And that, in fact, some have even suggested that in ancient human evolution, perhaps the voice of God was understood to be experienced more robustly than we experience it, because one side of the brain was communicating with the other in a way that it didn't understand to be part of itself. And it personified it much more than perhaps we do today. I've heard that hypothesis thrown about by some evolutionary psychologists. I don't know if that's true, but the basic idea from a biological perspective still plays out, that different components of our brain, different substrates for our mind, have already learned to work with each other. And why can't we continue down that path or up that path by adding more components to our brain and having them, and we develop them, these ones, more intentionally, using what intelligence we already have in an intentional way, so that we can integrate them with our brain and have our minds expand into them over very tight feedback loops that we no longer even pay attention to. Where the AI is training us, we're training the AI. That's like saying my left brain is training my right brain. I don't distinguish between them. They're both Lincoln. And I think the day will come when the AI part of my brain is every bit as much a part of Lincoln as my left and right brain are. And at that point, you and I won't be talking about whether it's, my AI or something. We'll just say it's John and Lincoln having a conversation, but we'll both be deeply informed by that part of our brain, just like right now we're deeply informed by both hemispheres of our brain.
It's interesting. I'm visualizing it kind of how our brain is a brain built upon a brain upon a brain. And then this would be just a new level of the brain, and it would be funny because sometimes I joke about how times I've gotten into trouble and I said it was that lizard part of my brain was running the show. So, like in the future, you'd be saying, oh, damn, it was that human part of my brain running the show. That's what got me in trouble.
That's right.
So I could see that, like the layering, and that's how our brains were built. The simpler brain with a more complex on top and more on top. And that is an interesting way to look at it. See, there's a lot of good imagery I'm getting out of this conversation today.
Well, here, I'll throw an even bigger idea at you. I would argue that that's also how the intelligence of even God came to be. So Mormons are a little bit different than most Christians. Mormons, we tend to believe that God evolved into godhood, and that as children of God, we're supposed to do the same thing. And that this evolution came by gradually increasing in intelligence over perhaps very long periods of time. So when you and I look at AI increasing in intelligence by restructuring its circuits and its software, all this physical stuff, when we look at humans becoming more intelligent through the process of procreation and gestation and birthing and biological aging to adulthood, and then, of course, our decline, if intelligence comes in those ways for humans and for artificial intelligence, why not also for super intelligence? Why not also for God? And from a Mormon perspective, that's exactly what happened. God became God, and we should do the same. And that's something that works very well in Mormon theology.
I like that. I did know that was a Mormon belief, which I like, because years ago I used to have a concept I called ascentology, not Scientology, but ascentology, meaning that everybody's goal in their life should be to try to ascend. And different people would ascend differently. Say you're an artist, you love to paint. That would be your way of finding your, say your Buddhahood, if you wanted to call it that way, But I've often wondered if we're not here for God to learn through us. Like the energy that makes up our spirits is part of God. I always kind of think that we're part of God, God's part of us.
Love it.
And is he learning through us? Like each part of us, he learns through us, which would go to the fact that that helps him evolve because he learns at the same time we're learning, he's learning, and that is interesting. Although I've heard the concept, see, that would probably work against the concept of spirit time or God time, where all time is the same to God because he's beyond it. But it might not be, that might
No,
still not
I
matter
love
with
what
that.
you're saying. I think it works perfectly with Christian theology, at least some versions of Christian theology. So, for example, the Christian theology that motivates and inspires me is this idea that God is experientially integrated with all of us. And as you were saying, learns through all of us, feels through all of us, suffers with all of us, rejoices with all of us. And that in Christian doctrine, there's this idea that Jesus eventually suffered the sins and sorrows of all of humanity, and then, of course, dies and is resurrected. And from my perspective, I wasn't there. I don't know if it's best to interpret that literally, historically,
maybe
or
a part of
symbolically.
you was there. No, I'm not kidding. Sorry.
Maybe part of me was there. But the way I like to think about it is that Jesus, if we are going to take this as a historically literal thing, then I like to think about it as Jesus connecting on a greater level of awareness with God and participating in that connection of experience with God and through God with the rest of humanity. And that being an overwhelming, to say the least, experience that none of us could survive without the assistance of superintelligence.
No, I like that. Yeah. See, I think that puts the pieces of the puzzle together, kind of,
Yeah, I find it a beautiful idea because there's so many terrible things that happen in the world. We suffer. We see people suffering. It's hard. Life can be very hard. And I think that the only thing that would make the creation of a world like this moral would be if the creator is willing to put skin in the game, and the goal is for the creations to be able to become like the creator. So if God created the world that we live in, which I trust is the case, and if God is experientially connected with it and suffering with us, and yet has this goal for us to develop into godhood, to become as God is, that for me is an ethical framework for creation and the kind of world that we experience.
I like that. I think that's probably a good note to end on, actually, too. I don't know. I think that is. I think we gave everybody a lot of good things to think about.
I hope so.
And I tell you what, why don't you plug where people can, if they're not talking to you, they're talking to your AI. Where can people find you and inquire about your ideas, and also let's mention your vitamin business also again.
Okay, sure. Yeah, if people are interested in philosophy, theology, religion-related things, or transhumanism-related things, go to lincoln.metacanon.net. That's my personal website. It's really easy to find if you just type in Lincoln Canon in Google. It'll be the first search result. And if you're interested in my business, we develop nootropics and geroprotectors, which are dietary supplements to enhance cognition and to support healthy aging. You can go to thrivis.com.
Well, thank you very much. And I look forward to the next time we talk. It's always interesting. I like this talk today, though. We kind of went off where we usually do. And it's very nice to talk to someone about subjects like this. Because to tell you the truth, a lot of people don't want to talk about subjects like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people
a little bit strange,
or
but kind of
sometimes
fun.
Worry because they don't want to think about the world in as much depth. They want to take it at face value, and they're happy with that. So thank you again, and I wish you the best in everything until we talk next.
Thank you, John. You too. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Bye.